Okay. Okay. So, all right. So I'll start off with. So, Susan, what inspired you to enter voice acting?
That's a very good question. I started voice acting through doing voices on radio. There were many, many opportunities back in the 70s to do voices of children, because I specialized in doing children's voices. And on radio, of course, it came in very, very handy, and there were lots of roles for children played. They didn't use real children back in the 70s and 80s in those days. That's all changed, by the way. But they used people like me, and I got a lot of work. And then, of course, I discovered there was another world of voiceover in cartoons.
That sort of ties up with my next question. What inspired you to enter television?
Well, it was exactly that it led from radio into being invited to audition for what were then new things. We didn't really have children's cartoons of this sort of nature where, an actor would do the voice of a character. It was always narrated. It was normally narrated by someone like Bernard Cribbins or, a famous name. And then they decided to use actors like me to do the voices, and thank God they did.
Exactly. So did you find it hard trying to make it in television in the beginning, or just trying to get yourself out there?
I didn't find it hard because I just kept doing these auditions and getting offered these cartoons. I mean, I was extremely lucky to get these. There was Jimbo and the Jet Set. There was the Family Ness. There was then later Moomin, and so I consider myself yes, it's really. I was so lucky. I just walked into them really as a voice artist specialist, and at the time there weren't many of us doing it. Oh, sorry. There were only a handful of us doing it really. So I guess I just got in. I was just very lucky to go straight into cartoons in that day.
So what was your earliest voice acting appearance on television that you can remember?
Well, the first thing on television was, I think, the Family Ness, which was a couple of Scottish children who lived by the Ness, the Loch Ness, and befriended the monsters. I don't know if you ever saw that one. That was with Angus and Elspeth. I'm sure you can find that on my website.
Yeah, I probably have seen it as well. I mean, yeah, I'm sure they did run reruns of it.
Well, the Family Nest was the first one, and then that was Peter Maddox. Peter Maddox then wrote Jimbo and the Jet Set, and the wonderful thing about Peter Maddox's ideas was that they were also educational. And so Jimbo and the Jet Set, I played this aeroplane that flew around the world, and we did a wonderful thing of recording a whole lot of interesting bits of information that children could then listen to on their phones, on their parents' phone, I should say, and it sort of introduced them to the world and to other countries. But the storylines of Jimbo were wonderfully adventurous in that they were, all about going to other countries and educational from that point of view, seeing what, in a childish, obviously a very childish way. But Jimbo was a great one to do, and then after Jimbo, I think there were some random ones like, Albert. The Fifth Musketeer.
I do remember that. I remember seeing that when I was a kid. It was on the ABC, which is our version of BBC in a way. I do remember that show. It was pretty cool.
That was a cool one. We did that, quite a lot of that. And then there was the Moomins, and the Moomins was quite a long standing thing.
So how do you find voice acting different from normal acting?
Well, of course. course, it's different for me because I'm always putting on a funny voice. You know, this is the art of it. Is actually contorting your voice into making a different sound. And so that's really, that's what you're doing. Well, I on stage, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't dream of doing that. I'd sound like me, or if I were playing a character, I'd sound like the character. But not this sort of strange contortion that you have to do to sound like either an aeroplane or a wooden doll like Noddy. So you get this kind of sound that is very different from being a straight actress.
Did you ever try out normal acting in anything, like professionally?
Oh, yes. Oh God, yes. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I started off really as an actress in rep, in theatre, and that is really where I expected to stay and where I wanted to be. But the voiceover world was very attractive and called me away from the theatre for many years. In fact, it's only really recently I've about 10 years ago I went back into the theatre.
Well,
found that to be a wonderful, wonderful medium.
Well, I guess now it's time to talk about the elephant in the room, or the program which you're best known for doing, and that would be, of course, Noddy.
Noddy. Yes.
So tell me... go on.
No, I was simply going to say that there's also The Black Cauldron, which I went to Hollywood to do.
Oh, yeah, I vaguely remember that, too.
The Disney film, which is become a bit of a cult film, really. But yes, back to Noddy.
So, how did you land the role as the voice of Noddy in the 1992 to 1994 series, which is probably their best-known series? How did you land the role?
It was really going up to Manchester to audition for Cosgrove Hall, and the voice came to me. I suppose they just asked me to do what I could do, and this little voice came to me really, and it was then the daughter of Enid Blyton,
who was the writer, of course, of the Noddy books in the 30s and the 40s.
Exactly, and it was the daughter who came to the auditions and said to the director, "That is the voice of Noddy." So I was extremely lucky in that I was, given this part.
Was that the first television adaptation of Noddy?
It wasn't the first adaptation, but the others, as I say, had earlier been done with a sort of narration. And I think that might have been Bernard Cribbins, and not acting out the parts. And excuse me, Jimmy Hibbert, who did all the men parts, and I really went through. We did all the characters, we did all the voices, and I think that was the first time they'd done such a big thing with actors acting out every single character.
So what was it like to work on the set of Noddy?
Oh, well, of course, we were doing the voices separately from the actual...
Well, what was it like to work on Noddy, period, then? Like, full stop?
It was enormous fun. I mean, it's one of the nicest jobs ever, really, because I was with lovely people and lovely, lovely script. We enjoyed the scripts very much because they'd been adapted very cleverly and very subtly from the 50s Enid Blyton stories into rather modern versions that modern children could identify with.
How was the series actually made? Was it made through computer generated, or was it stop motion? Or...
Not at all, no. We had the most wonderful stop motion puppets that were about a foot high on a set. I mean, they had a real set in the studio that was fabulous. Toyland, Toy Town, the market, the harbour. They had, the most beautiful, dreamy sets.
Do those...
I mean, they've all gone, unfortunately.
Oh, because that was going to be my next question. Do those puppets and does that set physically still exist somewhere?
No, I don't. I think the puppets might. I hope they do, because that would be tragic if they if they didn't exist. But because they were incredibly expensive to make. Every moving part that you could imagine moved. Every finger of every hand, every blink of the eye, everything moved to make it look like an animation. Brilliantly done.
Stop motion, they say, and I've experienced it myself because back in school I experimented with a little bit of stop motion animation making myself. They say it's the most hardest form of animation and the most tedious form to do, but at the same time it is also the most rewarding when it's all finished. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree. I think you're absolutely right. I think you've hit the nail on the head because there's a wonderful kind of humanity about it. There's, human beings are being involved in creating these movements and creating the whole atmosphere, whereas CGI and all that is, I think, yes, of course it's convenient and of course it's extremely clever, but it's not quite got the emotion of stop motion.
Do you think there's not enough stop motion productions made now? And also another thing I noticed is most of the stop motion cartoons that were made back then were mostly UK productions. Do you believe that?
I didn't know that. That's very interesting.
Well, I was just going to say, it's just coincidental because Wallace and Gromit at the time was stop motion, Fireman Sam, Thomas the Tank Engine, Postman Pat. Coincidentally, a lot of them were UK, but also, do you think that there's not enough stop motion now?
Absolutely right. I think, I mean, people are still doing it, aren't they? I mean, they are still, thank God, some people are doing it, but it's dying out because of the cost. Anything that's not cost-effective seems to be dying out. To be honest, I don't know whether they are still doing stop motion. I think the thing is that there's an awful lot of games now, video games, have taken over from this idea of stop motion cartoons.
Anyway, back to Noddy now, because I sort of went off a little bit of track there.
Yeah.
So, do you still maintain contact with a lot of the crew and fellow voice actors from Noddy?
Oh, well, I'm still in touch with Jimmy. Yes, Jimmy's still there. He's doing all sorts of other things. I'm not doing so much now because, as I say, they use children quite a lot now and younger actresses. But, that's fine. That's the way it goes. And I've been doing other things like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So I'm quite, one's life moves on. One's career moves on.
Do you have a favourite episode of Noddy, or what was your most favourite script to work on in that Noddy run?
Oh, that's difficult. I think probably the one that involved the animals at the zoo and the Ark. I think it's the most fabulous episode. I can't remember the details now, but it was wonderful because all the animals had to get back into the Ark, and there was all, convoluted storyline with Mrs. Noah, very Irish Mrs.
Oh, that's right, Mrs. Noah. I remember that now.
But yes, I loved every one. I think there's not one I can say I liked better than another.
I had a couple of favourite episodes. Mine was the episode where Noddy did the milkman round. That was a pretty funny episode, but probably my most favourite would have to go to when he continuously borrowed Big Ears' umbrella and never returned it, or something would always happen to it.
Well, if it involved Pink Cat, that's another rather nice little episode. Pink Cat was always so cross and losing her tail.
That's right.
And all of that. And then, of course, the other lovely one was the one with Father Christmas.
I do remember that. Actually, in primary school, my art teacher, as like a little sort of before the school holidays, she actually showed us that episode in class. So I do remember that very well.
Well, it was all very sad because Noddy missed Father Christmas.
I know.
And then, of course, he didn't miss him at all. He saw him. It was very sweet. And in fact, one of the lovely things was they sent me to Canada for some reason to sing a song, to sing the Christmas song for that episode. There were two songs, I think. Hello, Father Christmas was one of them, and then another one. And they, for some reason, it was cheaper for me to go to Canada to record it with the orchestra there, with the composer, I guess, than for them to bring everybody over to England. And then, of course, you realise it went to America and became something different in America. I've forgotten what they called it. It was Noddy, and it was a sort of live-action thing, and then they'd show the cartoons in the middle. Do you know about that?
I vaguely do know about that. I'm not from America, so I don't know exactly, but I do have a rough idea. But in Australia, they used to show Noddy on the ABC, which pretty much is our version of the BBC in a way. It's a government-run television station, and pretty much in the after-school hours, or sometimes even in the morning, that's when they used to show Noddy most of the time, and they did that up until about 2000, I think, or around that time.
Really? Gosh.
Yeah, I know. It does seem like a while.
I like that.
It is.
Well, and then the other thing, of course, there used to be a Noddy car that you'd get outside the station, some strange a train station, and they used the laugh. The laugh at the end of each sequence where Noddy does that little.
Yeah, that's it.
And they used to use that in the car mechanics. Every time I'd go on the train, I'd hear my voice coming out of this machine. It was quite weird, rather spooky.
So Noddy did have a lot of interesting episodes, but after your version, which ended in 1994, I believe, what did you think of the new CGI version, which they then made the next decade? What was your feelings?
My feeling was no, I didn't like that. I didn't like it. I really didn't like it. I think it was, as I say about CGI, I think it's got a hardness which it's very clever, but it just didn't. It didn't do it for me.
Noddy wasn't the only stop-motion cartoon which they converted to CGI as well. Fireman Sam the next decade then converted to CGI, and Postman Pat, I believe, as well. So I guess it was an ongoing trend in a way.
Well, absolutely. Well, as I said earlier, I think it's because it's so much, it's obviously a cheaper form. But, you are quite right that stop-motion is the best way. And in the great cycle of things, that'll come back again, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure it will eventually as well, because, eventually probably everybody will just get sick of CGI because it will be the only thing that's around, and then they'll probably go back to 2D and stop motion in a way. Well, that could happen.
Well, exactly. And it's, it's a lovely way for people to start using their imaginations and using moulding, plasticine, for goodness sake, is what they made Wallace and Gromit out of.
Exactly.
It's wonderful. It's a wonderful art that shouldn't be lost. Basically.
Do you think that if Noddy was around today, it would have the same impact as what it did back when they were making Noddy when you were on it? Do you think it would be as popular, or do you think people would see it as politically incorrect or all that sort of stuff?
Well, it's an interesting point. I don't think... I think children would love it. I think children would still love it. In fact, they are reissuing some cartoons from the old days, but not Noddy, I don't think. But cartoons from an earlier stage, from the 50s and 60s, I think. So it'll be interesting to see how they are taken, how people react to those cartoons. I just think that a good cartoon is a good cartoon. There's no question about it, whether it's dated or not. Look at people, people wax lyrical about Bagpuss and very old ones that are still talked about. Because apart from anything that's part of your childhood, you do kind of hold on to, don't you?
Exactly, and even now in Australia, the Noddy books are starting to become in again. Like in a lot of mainstream shops now, you can buy the Ian Brighton Noddy novels just on sale. They're pretty big. Like in Australia, I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but in Australia we have a discount department store called Big W, I've seen like they always have them on sale with their own special shelf there.
That's so sweet.
Mm.
They don't have them with the CDs though, because what we used to do was have a book and a CD.
I think unfortunately MP3s have sort of taken over now, so not that I know of, I haven't seen any CDs attached to it as well, but next time I do go there I will have a look out for that.
Well, I very much doubt they will, because I think that, CDs are pretty much, as you say, out with the ark now.
Now I have to ask the next question. In recent times, Noddy's gone through a little bit of controversy between the Noddy character and Big Ears, to a point where they've sort of minimised as much contact with Big Ears as possible because of a lot of inappropriate, or what they claim, inappropriate connection. Like, have you heard about that? And
I have, really, and I laugh at it.
I mean, like, they say that it's a bit inappropriate for an elderly man, like character Big Ears, to be mixing with a young Noddy character. Like, what's your thought on that, and what do you think of how the people see that as controversy now?
Well, to be honest, I think it's ridiculous. We're talking about a 1950s story of a dwarf, a dwarf and a wooden doll. He's a goblin or a dwarf, isn't he, Big Ears?
Mm.
He's not a human being. He's not a man. He's not going to be what's the word? Predatory. He's a friend, as in the goblin world and the fairy world, and the wooden doll world. It shouldn't be compared to, a dirty old man or Rolf Harris or anything like that. We're going. To me, that is just absolutely ridiculous.
Well, I mean, unfortunately now, parents are quick to jump on anything which is a little bit different from what they see as the norm. And Noddy wouldn't be the only person. Like, now we've got Cookie Monster from Sesame Street eating healthy food, and there's a whole lot of other things. Do you reckon by people being too overprotective now, it's ruining television, or it's ruining the way you make a television show, because you always have to have your guard up?
Well, I suppose if I were involved in children's television now, I'd be more aware of all that. But to be honest, I'm not aware of it. I just hope that they see sense. And don't go overboard with being politically correct.
I mean, personally, I think there was nothing wrong. I grew up all right watching Noddy and Big Ears, and I think there was nothing wrong with that. They were just a couple of friends, and I that never crossed my mind ever. And then, like, as an adult, I got told that fact, and I'm like, that's just blown out of proportion.
No, I agree. I mean, as I say, we're talking about a book of, about a fairy situation. They're not real. They're dolls. They're toys, and to make anything of a relationship that's unsuitable is just ridiculous to my mind. But then maybe I'm old-fashioned, and maybe I see things in a slightly different way from modern young people. But I just want to say to them, don't go there. Don't worry. It's not a problem. That's all it was a story about friendship between a goblin, an elf, and a doll. That's all it is, really.
So that sort of ties up with my next question as well. How do you feel about television now? Do you think that television's golden era is sort of over, or do you think television's into decline, even kids' television? Or what's your opinion on how what you think of television?
Well, my view is that I don't watch it.
Oh, that's fair enough.
Sort of answers that, really. I just don't watch it very much. I think if I had grandchildren, then I would be much more aware, but I haven't. But I am told that there are some very good programs on, like Peppa Pig. And
I have heard of Peppa Pig. I mean, that's definitely long after my time, but I have heard of it.
Yeah, it's only if you've got your own children. But I think things like that are obviously very good. There must be, there's still obviously a lot of talent about. But I think nowadays they tend to use either a famous voice or a child's voice. And often that's very good, The children are very, very good these days. So I don't feel, I don't have any or bitterness or anything about, not being part of that anymore. I was very lucky when I was part of it, and now it's up to new young people like your good self.
Thank you, and I hope to go very far places in that industry.
Good.
So
you
what?
obviously love it. You obviously are interested yourself.
Oh I do love it a lot. And I'd also like to get into television a bit more, but I guess enough about me, because today we're focused on you, Susan.
Okay.
So what advice can you give to young people that want to follow in your footsteps and pretty much make it into television, or even doing what you were best known for, like being in cartoons? What advice can you give to young people?
To young people, I say this: if they're at school, watch what their teachers do and how they sound, and without being rude, imitate them. To take them off. It's what I used to do when I was at school, and I think you see a person, and then look at an object, whatever it is. I don't know, a glass or a table. I don't know, but because you might be asked to find a voice for a cartoon character that is an inanimate object. Imagine, I don't know, like a teapot in what was that wonderful Disney musical? Anyway, what I'm saying is, try and find a voice for something unusual.
Exactly.
And make that sound as if you are that inanimate object or that person talking.
And I think
a very good way.
I think the musical you were thinking of was Beauty and the Beast, or the show.
Yeah, that's it, exactly.
Which also came out at a similar time as Noddy, coincidentally, as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it came out in the early 90s.
Oh, right.
Mm.
But the thing about it is that that's a good way for a child to think about how to, and for anybody, try and just imagine how that object or that animal will sound, and that's where you go from there. And then you make a real tape, you make a voice tape, and you go to your agent and say, right, put me up for cartoons, please.
Do you have any plans of returning to television anytime soon at all?
Well, I would wait to be asked, Matt. If somebody would think of me, that would be very nice. But to be honest, I know that the business is very different now. I have actually just done a video game called Nelly Cootalot, which is really rather charming. I did some funny voices on that. So yes, there are ongoing things, but as I say, I've moved on, and doing theatre now is really what I love.
So tell us a bit. So what do you do mainly now in your retirement, or what do you do with yourself like these days, pretty much?
I write books. I'm writing stories. I'm writing a children's story, as a matter of fact. But I'm also writing some really rather academic stuff on Elizabethan and Jacobean drama. So quite separate from being Noddy. Quite a different kettle of fish.
And who knows, maybe in the future we might see your books being made now, and you might take the spot of Ian Blyton.
Yes. Well, wouldn't that be nice if I found I won't tell you what my subject is, but
that's quite all right.
I'll let you know.
Awesome. Well, that sounds really interesting, and who knows what the future. Who knows what'll happen.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt. And listen, I haven't done any voices, but I think if you can get them offline, that'd be fantastic to be able to use some of the ones from my website.
Sounds.
Would you be able to do
that? Possibly. I'll have a look. Sounds really awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time, Susan Sheridan. Before we go, could we get you to do Noddy's voice?
Well, let me just think what I can say. Okay, I'm having a think.
Awesome.
Miss Pink Cat, you can't leave your tail in the car because I have to pick it up every time you get it caught in the door. And where's my sixpence? And she will say, oh, Noddy, I can't give you sixpence because you have lost my tail. And Noddy says, but it's not my fault. Now, that's sounding a bit like somebody else. So I shall just say that Noddy always sounds very, very indignant because he's always a bit cross. So do you hear that slight petulance in his voice?
Exactly, and that is just how I remember it as well. That's pretty awesome.
That's good. Oh, well, I'm very, very glad that you rang and we've had this interview, my dear. Lovely.
That's all right.
Is that it? We've come to an end?
Pretty much, but before I go, well, I'm going to just sign off from the interview part now, but I still want to talk to you in a minute. Okay, so thank you very much, Susan Sheridan, and who knows if we'll see you next. See you.